Well, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Oh, I gotta try this again. This is ALCS. So good evening, everyone. That's, you know, the ALCS drill. Very good. That's great. Well, good evening, and welcome to our second Student Safety Night at Altamoma Christian School. We welcome everybody that's here. This is great. This is like 2 or 3 times what we started with last year, which is outstanding. Yes, you may do that. As well as on YouTube live, and so we welcome everyone that's viewing on YouTube. I'm Dr. Vance Nichols, and head of school at ALCS, along with our assistant principal, Mrs. Renee Wynn. I like that, yes, I like that. And our director of business operations and student services, Ms. Laura Jedlick. And Pastor Mike Collins of our sponsored congregation, Solid Ground Church. And we thank you for being here tonight for what we believe is a vitally important presentation for parents and adult family members. During our presentation, we will be talking about several different aspects of student safety, welfare, and security, including protecting our children physically, socially, emotionally, and spiritually. We will discuss purpose, and since this assembly is being aired live. However, we have planned time for questions and discussion during the final portion of our evening tonight. We all have a story, and at ALCS we are writing that story together. However, as we live life together at ALCS, we do so in the context of our culture in America. Not only have things changed since I first started in education nearly 40 years ago, but that cultural change has continued to accelerate at an unrelenting rate. Because of these tremendous and ongoing changes, schools and parents and institutions of all kinds are being challenged to their very core, and our nation's children are being put at risk in ways that they have never had to face before. That's the reason we initiated this event last year and wanted to get the school family together again tonight after last year's very encouraging response to share openly about many of these items, all of which have to do with the protection of our children and strategic ways to respond to these threats against them. Some of the things that we're going to talk about tonight are going to be difficult to talk about and will be of a very adult nature, which is why none of the kids are in here. If you are watching on YouTube, that caution also comes to you as parents, that we would recommend that your children not be within viewing distance or hearing distance as you view this. So as we dive in, let me ask Pastor Mike to come and ask the Lord's blessing on our evening together. Then Ms. Jedlick will come and lead us into our time of discussion. Pastor Mike.
Good evening, let's pray. God, thank you for being here. Thank you for the privilege of raising children, helping to raise children, and we ask that tonight you would open our ears, open our hearts, and please give us large heaping scoops of your wisdom. And as we prepare ourselves to send our kids out, to be world changers, to be a light in the darkness, but also to raise them in such a way that they would fulfill all the dreams you have for them. Use them for your glory. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Good evening. I see a lot of new faces. That's kind of fun. How many of you are here new this year that were not here last year? Oh, great. Thanks. That's awesome. We are going to cover a couple of things that we covered last year again. Okay, so we're going to briefly gloss over it just because we have enough new people that I feel like it's a good idea to just kind of touch base on some of that stuff. So for those of you that have already heard that, just take a snooze, okay? First, I want to thank all of our parents that have been a part of making our Red Ribbon Week so amazing. This is why we look like we do today. So we are voting against drugs today, except we're all red, white, and blue. We're not typically this patriotic for a regular event, but it turned out to be super nice. So thanks, you guys. Having parent involvement and being a part of the things that we're doing here on campus, I think is imperative to our culture and our context here. I think it's critical for our kids to see us working together for a mutual goal. And that's what this night really is about. It's about us partnering together with you, kind of giving you guys some information that we're privileged to because we do this every single day, day in and day out, and most evenings, right? So there are a few things I wanted to say to get us started. Dr. Nichols gave us an overview in an email today about what it is that we're going to cover. He kind of glossed over it again today. But what I want you to know is that even though some of this stuff may be pushing us outside of our comfort level, and I feel like it will, I've been working through this for a couple of months now as we're processing it. I have practiced saying some of these words that I'm going to say tonight and pretending that I'm saying them in a mixed company, larger audience than my living room. So I just want to say that even though it may sound like some of these things are just going to flow out, that's practice.
Yeah.
It's not lost on me that these topics are difficult, they're hard, but they're important. See, I need our parents, like, fix my hair, this is being on live. Thank you. I don't want to look crazy, okay? Just stand that way. So anyway, as we're looking through this, please remember that it is not lost on me that this is difficult. It's going to look and appear, I hope, as if I'm unfazed and unmoved, but that's just sort of the nature of the beast, right? Yeah. So it's just that God has called us to be truth tellers in all situations. And I don't know, I've read the Bible, it's not G-rated, and it's hard. It's hard to get through sometimes. So that's just kind of my little first caveat. And so just want to make sure that you guys kind of knew that going in. I'm going to say that a couple more times tonight before we get done. I was teaching in class today, and my 8th graders were talking about something, and I said, well, that's a human assumption. That's a human response. And then they responded by saying, again, that's a human response. And I might have said 10 times in the class, that's a human response. But because they heard it one time one way and felt like that might be truth, they kind of got a little mixed up. So forgive me, I teach 8th graders. So if I tell you again, that was a human response, that's in response to that, okay? So just so you guys know. All right, we're going to start with bullying. That is probably the #1 topic of all schools, of all campuses across the nation. I would love to tell you that the statistics are showing that it's a brand new thing, but it's not, right? Doesn't matter where you go, it doesn't matter what school you're at, it doesn't matter if it's a Christian school or if it's a non-Christian school or if it's an all-boys school or an all-girls school, it doesn't matter if it's on the East Coast or the West Coast. Bullying happens anytime we have kids and people, we're going to talk about grown-up bullying, but we have people together for an extended period of time. We have this problem. It is a heart issue and it is a sin issue. Okay? Bullying is a sin and heart issue. It's not a school issue. It also is a cultural issue. We're going to talk about why that's true in just a little bit. But as culture changes and life changes, bullying changes, right? In the 1950s, bullying looked a little bit like this, and that's kind of how we view things. Shoving somebody in a locker. For some people, that's just kind of where we get stuck. In generations past, we would have considered bullying to be a boys' issue, right? Yeah, so boys are going to hit each other, they're going to punch each other, they're going to push each other down to try to get lunch money or whatever it is, right? We thought that was true, but in 2007, I think it is, no, 2004, girls jumped on the bandwagon and we came out with, did anybody know this show? Mean Girls, yeah. So girls jumped in and we made sure that we got an equal playing time on bullying, but girls do it just a little bit different. Girls don't tend to shove girls in lockers. They don't tend to do those things. They tend to do things a little bit more subtly. I was practicing this with my child, not all of it, this stage. And she said, they just talk behind each other's backs. And I'm like, you know what? Right, that's what girls do. Girls are really guilty of gossip. Boys seem to not have as much time for that. It happens. It happens both ways. It's not gender specific, but there are some commonalities, right? So girls decided that we were gonna make sure that we were in the game with bullying. But today, we have a whole new problem. Bullying is taken to the internet. Most bullying today will happen on the internet, in personal devices, or in social media, or in some other technologically driven fashion. Some of you guys that were here last year, can you think of or remember why technology seems to be the reason that kids really, or kids and adults, want to use the internet rather than our playground.
Because you don't have to look the person in the face.
Yeah, totally true. You don't have to look at the person in the face. It's so much easier to bully somebody from behind the screen. I can think anybody, like, if we're real, this is our family, right? So we can be real. The things you think before you text something. Have you guys seen those text memes where they're like, text, 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 back, back, back. I'm not gonna say that. Delete, 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 delete. I'll be home at 5, honey. Yes, I'll get the milk. You guys have seen them, right? Can you get the milk? You can get the milk on your way home. Delete, delete, delete. I'll get it. Thanks. I love you. Yeah, because we can hide behind it. We can also be anonymous in the internet, or what we think is anonymous on the internet, right? We talked a little bit last time about our digital responsibility and our footprint and what that looks like. We're not going to dive too deep into it today because we have some other topics, but if you have questions about anonymity and internet usage, please feel free to make an appointment and come in and talk to us. We'd love to talk to you about it. We have a bunch of resources for you on how to make sure that you are staying on top of what your kids are on top of. Okay? They are way better at this stuff than we are. Going to spend a ton of time doing that. But the thing again to remember about bullying is that it is a sin issue and it requires human interaction to happen. When I was writing this, I was thinking, and that's a little bit different, I thought, that's so true. It is a heart issue, we all agree. Bullying is a heart issue, and it requires humans to participate. Your computer, your technology, your phone cannot bully you all on its own, except for those crazy alarms that go off in the morning. Tell us to get up and go to work. I feel like that's bullying. I think my milk's doing it for its own joy. I don't know. But yeah, even that, right? I had to set the alarm. So the devices themselves are not bad. Technology is not bad. The humans operating those devices are the ones with the heart and sin issues. They are not bad people. They are making poor choices, and it is connected to their heart issue. Are we kind of clear? So what is bullying? I think one of the things that's easiest to get kind of confused about is what is bullying and what isn't bullying. Bullying today has that standard that anytime my child comes home and he's unhappy or she's unhappy, she's been bullied. Anytime she wasn't a part of something that she felt she should have been a part of, she must have been bullied. That's not entirely true. She may be just victim to her friends being bad friends, making poor choices. Maybe she wasn't being a good friend. Well, there's that. What role does my kid play in that? But simply put, bullying is an imbalance of power. Bullying is a form of abuse, and it's really most driven by the intent of the bully. What is the bully intending to accomplish? Are they trying to hurt you, or are they trying to better their position? What do they want out of it? A true bully is doing it for their joy and their pleasure. Okay? Sometimes we have kids make a bad choice, they hurt their friend, and the bully is the one crying in our office. And the victim is fine and back out on the playground until they get home, and then they say they were bullied, and then they come back crying because they got all confused again. So we want to remember as parents, as we're having these conversations, what bullying really, really is versus what it isn't, okay? And how they get this information, tragically, is from us. Our children literally are monkeys see, monkeys do. You know, my mom used to say, don't do as I say, or don't do as I do as I say, right? And I always thought, that's kind of dumb. Why would you say that? Are you not doing the right thing? What am I doing? So they really do what we say, or what we do, not what we say. So we can be talking all day long, but if we are doing the thing, they will do the thing, okay? I was trying to explain this to my daughter one day that sometimes me telling her doesn't help, and she was adamant that I could just tell her the instruction, blah, blah, blah. So we walked in the house, and she kicked off her shoes in the middle of the floor, and I asked her, well, do your shoes go there? And she said, no. Have I ever told you your shoes go there? No. Where do I tell you your shoes go, for heaven's sakes? Moms, you guys know what I'm talking about. Are you kidding me right now? How many times have you organized their closet? They have great little squares, perfect little cubbies. We have a great spot for your shoes, yet they're in the middle of the floor. Why are they there? She's sitting there, she's crying, she's sad, I don't know. And I looked at her and I said, well, whose shoes are those? Yours? Right. Did I ever tell you that's where they belong? No, but you watched mine, they're sitting right there. I also have cute little cubbies for my shoes, but I walk in the house and I kick them off right in the floor of the kitchen every single day. Sometimes 2 days in a row. Sometimes on the third day, I think, whew, she's gonna nail me on this. I better start picking up some shoes, right? It doesn't matter what we say, parents. It matters what we do. What are you doing on your social media accounts? What are you doing with your friends? What are you saying when you hang up from a conversation? What does your text look like? What are they hearing? That's uncomfortable, I know, but it is really true. Some of you guys had heard me, I shared that I did this last year. This was my own bullying moment. I was so sad when, sorry, I know, still too soon. I'm not going to go through the whole terrible story about how this happened, but it wasn't until I was teaching in a class about bullying and how we just kind of do these things without even thinking about it that I realized I had posted that on social media on my Facebook account in 2015, and I thought it was hilarious because Deflategate, right? It was brilliant and funny. And then I had to step back and think, he really paid a price for that. I wasn't a part of this conversation. I wasn't in that game. I was just a bystander. And so I had to really kind of gut check myself. I can proudly say that since I've had to be so transparent with you all, I don't do that anymore. I try not to laugh at them. Still human. But I never repost another one. I am still human. I am still flawed. But my point is simply that this is a culture problem that we have created. And we think it's funny. We get really mad when our kids say, but I was just joking. Right. And that's what every kid in our office says when he's hurt somebody else's feeling or she's hurt someone's feeling. I was just kidding. We taught them that. Dang it. Okay, hopefully next year I won't feel compelled to share that, but I just feel like it's so truthful. I did that, and that's so mean. Now the good news is, or maybe the bad news, I can't actually go apologize to Tom Brady and say, I'm so sorry I cyberbullied you. That's random. But I kind of did, right? I can apologize to him, but I can use it as an example of what not to do and why we shouldn't do it anymore. But as a culture, we are spinning further and further out of control in this. Jimmy Kimmel has an entire segment set up for mean tweets against celebrities. They're hilarious-ish. If you have the stomach for some of them, do you know how long it took me to find a couple that I could actually post here, even after all the disclaimers of what we were going to talk about? And these are grown-up people tweeting to celebrities about their jobs or the things that they're doing, and we find humor in it, and we're capitalizing on it. But really, the person writing those things are doing it for their own joy. They're not doing it for anything else. It's not helpful information, right? But this is what we're watching at home on our TVs. When we tune in to Jimmy Kimmel Live and we're watching this and we're laughing, our kids are experiencing this as their culture, okay? Maybe you guys don't do that, but even our Oscars decided that this was something that we should do. So they put it on there, right? So this is a form of bullying. We all agree that this is an imbalance of power. It's not appropriate. Some of them are funny. Okay. But what bullying is not? Let's go back to that, right? So we know all those things are bullying. We know the imbalance of power is not okay. What it's not is just being a bad friend. If someone annoys each other, they're just maybe not the best of friends. You do not have to be best friends with every person in the class. I explain that to kids at least once a week. You do have to be considerate. If somebody does something unintentionally, it's accidental, it's a one-time thing, it's not repeated, it's probably an accident. If somebody just doesn't invite that person to have lunch with them that day, that's not intentional, that's not bullying, just maybe they didn't want to have lunch. Maybe she was eating broccoli and kids think broccoli smells. Yeah, I cooked cauliflower in my office the other day. They were all bullies. Every single one of them in there were bullies about my cauliflower. I think they're still talking about it. But we do want to make sure that you guys know that we are on top of it. It is a conversation that we're having in the classrooms. We're talking about it very, very regularly. We start in 4th grade to 8th grade having very intentional conversations where they're very specific. It is a 7 to 8 week course depending on what the kids need. We start it typically at the point of the kids' need. So we try not to go and jump in and give them a whole bunch of problems to start out with. But when we start to see a little bit of imbalance of power start to happen, we kind of jump in and start teaching them this particular thing. Using a program called The Protectors, which is a faith-based program. Some of the things that we talk about are what it looks like to be a come alongside stander and not be a bystander, not be the person watching it, not relying on the victim themselves to have the strength to stand up on their own. It's a common myth that if they were just stronger, they wouldn't be bullied. That's not true. If they had that capacity, they wouldn't have been in the victim status to start out with. They're not going to suddenly grab that. But there is a power of two. So if one person walks up and says, hey, Pastor Mike, hey, Dr. Nichols, don't talk to him like that. Oh, let's go. That's not cool, right? We do a thing that's stop, talk, and walk. Just teach them some common language, and then we kind of go over it year after year after year because we have to keep reminding them about it. It gets a little bit more in depth as they get a little bit older, and their conversations, we kind of adjust to what they actually need. We talked a little bit already about cyberbullying being the biggest thing on our campus, or not our campus, but in probably every campus across the world. Cyberbullying is so fun. It happens even in our video games. Yeah, so we get to be cyberbullied by total and complete strangers. Yeah, or we get to bully total and complete strangers. We set up ourselves in games that are multiplayer games that almost intentionally pit us against each other. One of those games this year, and if your kids have come home and said, Miss Jedlick said we can't talk about Fortnite ever again, I did. They're not lying. I can't take it anymore. They pretty much, that's pretty much my answer when they can't manage themselves. Oh, what? You can't control Foursquare? Great, we just don't play Foursquare. So, yeah, with cyberbullying, that's one of the things that you guys as parents are going to have to take the lead on. We don't have access to their devices. You have to stay in their devices. You have to be that parent, okay? Every child should have at least one, if not both of their parents, have full and complete access to their device at all times, okay? They cannot have adult privacy when they're 10. They can't control it. They don't know. The part of their brain that would help them know what to do in that situation has not developed. It's our job to set those boundaries and limits for them. Predators in the cyber world know that your children crave that device, crave that attention, and they know immediately when there's a parent on the device and they go away quickly. That's you guys. Get in the device, be the jerk, make them mad. It's okay. It really, really is. Yeah. You guys set the limits, right? You decide what kind of social media they can be on. You decide all those things, what works for your family. We're not here to tell you what that is. I am here to tell you if you are not in their device, somebody else will be. Somebody will be. I'd rather it be me. It also gives my 14-year-old daughter a safety net. People don't text her weird things because they don't like it when Miss Jedlick replies. Hey, this is Miss Jedlick. How you doing? It's your mom. What? They don't text a second time. Funny enough, the problem seems to go away. Maybe I'm just a bigger bully. Maybe not. Anyway, the job is ours, okay? We as a school want to help you. We want to continue to inform you. We want to give you all of the newest, greatest information that we get. But please don't think they've got this under control. They lack the capacity. The smarter they are, the less capacity they probably have, to be honest, okay? because they just don't think they're gonna be a victim. They think they're that smart. Yeah? And they're brilliant kids. I get to see your kids every day. You have amazing kiddos out there, but they're still children, right? That's the thing to keep in mind. One of the things I think is most important for us to do is to know who these kids are, because they are different than we are, right? Do you ever look at your kid and think, what the heck? Who are you? How'd you get here? Why do you think that? How does that make any sense at all? Maybe that just happens in my house. So Ms. Wynn's going to take a few minutes and help us understand who this Generation Z person really is so that we can find the best ways to communicate with them.
Okay, so we're going to take a little segue now and talk about your students, your children, our students, which is Generation Z, Gen Z. And so we need to know who they are. So as we look into what bullying really is, we need to understand the social pressures that are facing our students, your children. And as a faculty, last year we actually went through a study on Generation Z. And so we wanted to understand who they are. So we need to know what motivates them. We need to know what their belief system includes. And what characteristics do they display? Who are they, and what molds them? Once we have an understanding, then we can begin to reach them for Christ. So let's take a look at Gen Z. With most of Gen Z's being born post 9/11, the greatest defining event of their lifetime is the Great Recession. This economic downturn, which I'm sure most of us have experienced, is widely considered the worst global downturn since World War I. When you consider how much the Great Depression of the 20s and the 30s left a deep emotional scar on the American psyche, how many of us have grandparents or great-grandparents that didn't waste anything, right? They made sure that everything had value. So that they were incredibly frugal as a result of that. So it's easy to see how the Great Recession has etched itself into the character of those coming of age during this time. The New York Times states that theirs is a story of innocence lost. Generation Z never had the luxury of a threat-free existence. So they've been forced to view life through a more guarded lens from the start. One generational expert, Neil Howe, even suggests that they be called the homeland generation, as defined by the post-9/11 birth date beginning in 2004. This is because the decade of the 2000s was marked by 9/11, the war on terror, the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, and a sense that the homeland was no longer safe. Consider the movies of this generation. Hunger Games, Divergent, this reflects this as well. This is just a glimpse into the mindset of this generation, our students. In many ways, Gen Zs share similarities with millennials, but there are key distinctions as well. Technology, for sure. Gen Z has never known a world without smartphones and social media. So it's even more ingrained for them than it is for millennials. They're the first what we call digital natives. They gobble up information quickly and they're ready to move on to the next thing in an eye blink. When it comes to Gen Z, seconds count. Advertisers are actually saying that if they don't communicate in 5 seconds, in 5 words with a big picture, that they will not reach this generation. One result of this tech generation, how many of you have seen WALL-E, the movie, remember that? Is the fact that by the time they reach adulthood, 47% will be obese. This is according to the NC State Institute for Emerging Issues. Privacy. Unlike more showy millennials, Gen Z is less interested in sharing their lives for public record. Anonymous social media platforms like Secret and Snapchat are more appealing to Gen Z than Facebook and similar platforms that leave permanent records, which can come back and haunt users later on. They just want it gone. Cultural diversity. With skyrocketing growth in biracial and minority populations, Gen Z embraces multiculturalism as a touchstone of who they are. And this also forms their attitudes on social issues. They've come of age when same-sex marriage and a black president are a given, and they expect continued social progress to reflect the ethnic diversity that is tightly woven throughout their lives. Sexually fluid. The accepting nature of Gen Z leads to strong support for such issues as sexual identification as well as orientation. Only 66% of young people today identify as exclusively heterosexual, which is the lowest of any generation up until this point. Gen Z is proving to be the most tolerant and the most fluid as same-sex couples and numerous sexual identities are given a platform in newer media and information is becoming increasingly accessible. Perhaps the most important and the most defining characteristic of Gen Z is that this is arguably the first generation in the United States that will have been raised in a post-Christian context. They are the least Christian generation to date. According to a new Barna study, 34% of Gen Z's religious affiliation is either atheist, agnostic, or none. In fact, teens 13 to 18 years old are twice as likely as adults to say that they are atheist. And just 3 in 5 13 to 18-year-olds say that they are some kind of Christian. Here's a true story. A pastor friend reported that one of his congregants went to a jewelry store to buy a cross necklace for his wife, and the young clerk asked him if he wanted a plain cross or one with the little man on it. She had no background reference whatsoever for who Christ is and why that little man was on the cross. None. The result of some of these characteristics, according to market research, is that they are eager to start working, they are mature and in control, they intend to change the world, they've learned that traditional choices don't guarantee success, entrepreneurship is in their DNA, they seek knowledge and information from social media as a resource tool, their social circles are global, they are hyper-aware and concerned about humanity's impact on the planet, and they live stream and they co-create. To us as a faculty, one thing we think about this is that is a huge outreach for ministry to reach these kids. You can capture that passion, you can capture that knowledge and that intelligence that they have. That's one thing that we're going to strive to do. So I'm going to switch it back to Laura and she's going to talk about that co-creation.
I think it's fascinating to look at generations being so different. And then I think about having just celebrated a birthday in my 50s, and how I used to listen to my parents say things, and I thought that they were insane. Like, what are you talking about? And now I find my mom's words kind of coming out of my mouth in a whole different way. It's a little bit scary, don't tell her. She's not on YouTube, so I'm safe there, so I'm good to go, right? To co-create is critical for this generation. So education, life, everything that we do, we hear this word co-creation over and over and over again. Have you guys heard it in your own workplaces? I know I've got some educators, so you're definitely hearing it. What about in some of your other fields? Are you guys hearing or having that conversation? Yeah, co-creation, collaboration, getting people involved. This current culture, regardless of the generation we're talking about, this culture is very collaborative. We want to all be a part of something. We want our voice. We don't have to be right, but we do have to be heard. I think that that's critical, and I think that that's an okay thing, right? I think co-creation is great. But what it means when we really think about what does it mean to co-create, it means we're merging a bunch of different people's ideas to make one idea, right? That gets a little scary when we're talking about biblical truths, okay? There is one biblical truth. That is our Bible. That is not a co-creation that we add to, okay? So when we're looking at things that we need to be teaching our children, at some of the things that are being co-created, we have to be uber careful in that we don't water down or add to our biblical truth. We all agree that that's probably a good thing, yeah. I did a quick thing on the internet, always scary, and did co-creation. What does that look like? Who defines it as what? And I got a bunch of different definitions from a bunch of different Forbes 500 companies and different things. But one thing that was evident was that even in that small thing, that when we were looking for what that all meant, that there was multiple answers, and we go to multiple places to get those answers, and it became abundantly clear that we as parents are no longer the one place our children look for information. Worse than that, we are not the first place, even if we make the list. If we made the short list, we rarely make the first list. And if you disagree with me, just ask your kid the next time he says something really silly or she says something really funky and you're like, what? Where'd you learn that? Well, Sally said so. My daughter, she was very upset. I told her I was going to share this story. I had told her this was something going on at her school. I checked it out. I know how to do that. I read their website and I said, this is what you're doing today. And she said, okay. And then I get a phone call from her and she said, no, Mom, that's not true. Because my friend emailed somebody else and they said that this is what's happening, so you're wrong. I need to do this instead. I'm very grateful. I learned from one of my pastors those little breath prayers, where you take a breath and you pray before you respond. And I said, we'll talk about that later, honey. Right now it's time for you to go to class. Right? So our kids look elsewhere for answers. They look elsewhere, they look to their friends, they look to the internet, right? Siri, okay? Everybody's bestie, right? As educators, we work really hard at learning how to do that open-ended question thing. We ask kids, what do you think? Here's a new concept. What do you think? In one of our lower grades, kinder and first grade students said to their teacher this year, who asked one of those great questions, well, what do you think? Why do you think this happened? And he said, I don't know, ask Siri. Okay, we can do that. Or we can go back to the text, which we've probably been looking through and get your opinion. But our kids are looking at Siri. She answers all kinds of things, right? We can tell Alexa to turn our music on and off. Miss Finn and I have music wars. Alexa, play country music. She's like, Alexa, stop that. This happens all the time. We do these things. Yeah, we do it in the office for Dr. Nichols. But my question is, for you guys, what questions are you as a family willing for Siri to answer for you? I don't even want to think about that. On one hand, I want Siri to answer a whole bunch of them so that I'm not the bad guy. Nope, Siri said so, right? But that's not the deal. We're here as parents to raise our kids. We need to get in the dialogue. We have to be in the narrative. They will ask Siri first. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. Tonight we're going to talk about two topics facing our children in very real and very epic ways. Topics that traditionally reserved for home discussion that unfortunately either will or are already mandated topics for educators and educational facilities. Okay? We didn't pick this. Trust me, when I'm thinking of fun things, I way rather have the conversation about, look at this cool new app where kids could hide pictures that you don't get to know about. That was a lot more fun than some of these conversations, okay? Again, I want to tell you that it is not lost on me the uncomfortable nature of this conversation, but our children, your children, are so valuable. We have to walk through our discomfort for their good. Can we all do that together? I want to ask you something that I ask our kiddos when we start to talk about things. If you have a question or you have a concern or something doesn't sit right, please let us know. Please don't leave here tonight thinking that we've gone way crazy one direction or another, that we haven't dealt with something, okay? I want to make sure that we're here and answering whatever questions that you may have. But we do want to tell you that in 2015, there was a California Healthy Youth Act of 2015, which was passed into law and took effect in January of 2016, mandates that schools teach medically accurate and age-appropriate comprehensive sex education to every child 7th grade to 12th grade, and younger if they choose to, and they stay medically accurate and age-appropriate, to be determined by the district. Okay? This is a mandate that educators have. They're not choosing it. This has been chosen as a part of our law. when we're talking about some of these things, I think it's important for us to remember that Altaloma Christian School does not have to adhere to those mandates. We do not have to teach those classes here in a private Christian school. We can opt out of that, okay? We will opt out of that. The closest we're getting to sex education at Altaloma Christian School happens with a plant, and that is enough. We believe wholeheartedly that this is a conversation for you and your families at home, okay? We firmly believe that God has an answer for each one of those questions that these kiddos are going to come up with, and it is found in our Bible. We believe also firmly that it is your place as parents to do that. Okay? If your kids have a question, we're going to answer questions from a biblical worldview. If your kids come up to me and they're asking me questions about sex, I'm going to say, that's a great question. You should talk to mom. You should talk to dad. Do you have a safe grown-up for that conversation? Okay? If they're talking to me about their feelings, something that's going on with them, maybe that's a little bit different story, but really, what is this? That's a conversation for you guys at home, okay? Deuteronomy 6 and 7, these commands that I give you today are to be on your hearts. Impress them on your children. Talk about them when you sit at home, when you walk along the road, when you lie down, and when you wake up. Moses is talking here about the greatest commandment of all. He's talking about loving our God with all of our heart, all of our soul, all of our mind, and all of our strength. And he's telling us that this is our responsibility as parents, to give that information to our children, impress that on them. Parents, that's your job. And I'm feeling like if he's telling me that it's my job with the most important thing, that one most important commandment, he probably means some of those other personal ones as well. I know that God cares about all of this. We have a lot of books on laws. We have a lot of books on laws that deal with sexual education. He dealt with it, right? And you as parents can deal with it too. We don't want to have to do that. So we're not going to. Okay? Any questions about that? We are not teaching that. Yes,
Mine isn't a question, that's more a comment. Just knowing, we do sports, so our kids are around a lot of other.
Did you read my notes?
No. We have found that we have had to introduce it at our own pace, because like what you were saying earlier, if we don't, they're surrounded by kids that already know, they're surrounded by Siri, the internet, and they're getting wrong information.
That's exactly it. And she couldn't have written my next paragraph better for me, so I'm going to just take that one off. They're living in a world of co-creation. Remember, we are not their first line of defense. So if your child is involved in anything outside of your home, your church, that's, unfortunately, I'm going to say something that's a little scary to the church. Not everybody in your church is following the same practices of life that you are. Okay? If they are on a sports team, if you're at the grocery store, if they're on the internet, children that attend other schools are getting this information every year. They have to. So your children are exposed to things that are uncomfortable for us that we don't want to talk about already. They are getting it. They are getting it as young as kindergarten. Pastor Mike shared with me a story when we were talking about how to navigate this conversation and these things well, and I'm going to slaughter this, so fix it if I get it wrong. One of his daughters came home and said that there were two kids in the bathroom having sex. They were in the bathroom having sex. So, of course, Pastor Mike had to really unpack that a little bit with his kiddo. Come to find out that's not what was happening. She had the wrong information, but other kids were sharing it. But by the time they got home, his kindergartner is coming home saying, and not from Altaloma Christian School, by the way, but it could, no, you know what? That's kind of funny to say, but it absolutely 100% could have been Altaloma Christian School just as easily as anywhere else. Kids get it wrong. Kids share it wrong. We hear this And some of the stuff we're gonna look at is so like, whoa, we get it wrong, what are they gonna do, right? The sexual education, the comprehensive sexual education mandates come to us from California AB 329 and is a part of our educational code. The purpose of this California Healthy Youth Act is to protect their sexual and reproductive health from HIV and other sexually transmitted infections and from unintended pregnancy, to develop healthy attitudes concerning adolescent growth and development, body image, gender, sexual orientation, relationships, marriage, and family, to have a healthy, positive, and safe relationship and behaviors, to promote understanding of sexuality as a normal part of human development, and to ensure pupils receive integrated, comprehensive, accurate, and unbiased sexual health and HIV prevention instruction provided by educators with clear tools and guidance to accomplish that end. Some of the questions and answers that go with this are schools required to teach this? Yes, every student. 7th grade through 12th grade. So that's middle school, friends. I don't want my kid having this conversation with another grown-up. She's in high school. She's in a Christian high school, so she's not gonna get this, but I'm gonna give her the conversation. There are some criteria, so I don't want it to sound like I'm bashing public school. There are really good reasons in some places why this happened, okay? Kids were getting bad information. We're sitting in a room full of parents that are wholly 100% bought in on their children, their safety, their education, their knowledge, their growth, and their spiritual well-being. That's not every parent on the planet, friends, okay? So it's quick and it's easy for us to judge why public school would do that, and that is not my intent. I know why public school did it, because those kids weren't getting it at home. They weren't getting it at all. So they were left in one step worse than kids getting it at public school, and this mandate was they were left to their own devices to figure it out. I don't know about you, but I know some amazing, wonderful public school educators, and I would be grateful that I wasn't able or capable of giving that information, that I would know and trust that they would do their very best with it, okay? So hear that when I'm talking about this. In nowhere are we judging. There is stuff going on out there in that world that we live in a bubble. We don't see, we don't deal with it every day, okay? There are good reasons for it. Does it fall inside of our value system, our biblical worldview? No, and that's okay. That's why we're here, right? That's why your kids are here. But not every person your kid interacts with has that same information. So I just want to keep saying that over and over again. I don't want you to leave here saying that we are in any way judging any of these things. I think that this information is critical for a high school student to know how to go out and conduct their life. I can't imagine anything scarier than having no information, no parent input, nothing that happened, no biblical training, and now they're grown-up adults. As grown-up adults, they're thinking they've got it all figured out. I don't know if y'all remember how smart you were at 19. I was brilliant. My mom, that was a rock. Yeah, she didn't get herself figured out till I was in my 30s. By my 30s, she started to get herself figured out. It was good news. She's in good shape now. But yeah, so keep in mind, that's why the state did this. Okay, we do have a liberal policy in education in California. That's California. But they were doing it to protect our children to the best degree that they could, given the resources and information they had. Okay. One of the things that's a little scary for us as believers is that one of the things that they have to make sure that they do is to provide information, comprehensive information regarding pregnancy, including the importance of prenatal care, but also all legally available pregnancy outcomes. So pregnancy outcomes, including parenting, adoption, and abortion. They do talk a lot about newborn safety surrender laws. There is a big piece of that that is focused on sex trafficking and sexual abuse, and no is no. So there's a lot of really good pieces in it also. Unfortunately, it isn't what we would think, what I think is age appropriate. Okay? Some of our kids are a little bit more mature. I know that some of us and Christian schools particularly have kids that are maybe a little more naive to some of the things of the world because they've not necessarily been out in of the world so much, right? That's part of one of the reasons that we keep them here in our little bubble. But they do have some information, but yeah, it's not exactly benign. It's pretty comprehensive. When the state said a comprehensive list, they meant comprehensive. It's really in-depth. I'll let you guys look at the law and decide what you want to pick and choose out of it. But one of the things that is a little bit scary to me is in those lower grades where they are teaching additional things, some of the materials, and she knows where I'm going. Some of the materials, because the content is so heavy, they've tried to figure out how to make the materials more kid-friendly. The content still isn't, but the materials become more kid-friendly. Here are 3 books that are approved but not mandated in addition to the state curriculum. We do have one local district that is mandating that they use this book. It's perfectly normal for ages 10 years and up. Okay, I have to tell you, if you ever want to watch Dr. Nichols blush, just start passing through some of the pages in this book. It's been comical. He didn't think it was so funny. But in this book, it is a state approved and one local district has mandated. It graphically addresses the areas of sexual relationships, including, but not limited to, masturbation, abortion, oral sex, anal sex, how do you use condoms, why would you use a condom, how do you get pregnant. One character said, we only did it one time. One character in a cartoon form said, but I pulled out. One character in a cartoon form said, she didn't even have an orgasm. They've made these cartoon characters so that our kids could pay attention and try to grasp and grapple with what it is that they're being taught. I brought it for you to look at if you want to. If you're sensitive, don't, okay? It's scary. I think it's fairly effective. There are some statistics in here that are spot on. There's some of the data that's definitely right, but it's not age appropriate. And this is a 10-year-old book. They're saying it's for 10-year-olds, okay? So this is what your potential goalie on your soccer team got in class last week. I can't imagine what my child would do with this at 10 years old, or how they would manage the content, okay? I think it's important that we know what our kids are being exposed to. The next 2 books address other issues of personal identification. Again, I want to be clear that the purpose of sharing these materials is to make you aware of what our children in our community are being exposed to, not to judge or not to be a statement of intolerance, okay? My hope is that as we as Christ followers, we would be Christ-like to those who may not share our biblical worldview exactly the same way, that we would be the hands and feet of Jesus, and we would be that radical Jesus that we learn about in Matthew, that meets the people where they are, that we raise our children to meet people where they are, without prejudice, without judgment, and certainly without disdain, but rather with love and acceptance, and full acceptance of who they are in Christ. Whether we agree with them or not, they are his children. I want us to just marinate in that. We judge as grown-ups so quickly. We are teaching our children to do the same thing. There is definitely a place for appropriate and inappropriate behavior conversations. Absolutely. I am not saying anything different. But let's be cautious that we as Christ followers are not the example of intolerance and hate. Okay. So the 2 books that are other books, they scare me a little bit more in terms of what content is. This book, I Am Jazz, is a book from Jazz Jennings. She is a very vocal, most popular teenage transgender child who has been in the transgender world since she was very, very young. She's Dateline or Lucy's Dateline, exploring her gender correction surgery. So we've changed it. So now they're getting, it used to be a gender reassignment, or gender confirmation, a gender confirmation surgery instead of for those of us that are really old, a sex change, right? That's, if we're going back another generation, they had a sex change. So this book, the problem that I have with this book is that it's being read to kindergartners and it's done in cartoon form so that they can try to understand what we're talking about. So if your kiddo's coming home with those kinds of questions, they may have been exposed to kiddos who have been reading this particular book, okay? I've seen several articles and listened to Jazz Jennings speak. She's a very powerful speaker. She has a lot of really great things to say about humanity and mankind and how we treat each other. Really kind of rocked my world in terms of how do we as Christians treat something that we maybe don't understand and that we're not a part of. Regardless of our biblical belief, how do we treat those people as a humanity situation? And those people, I mean people we disagree with, okay? Not to label. The other book, also read to kindergartners to help them, is Red. This is a great story of a little crayon who is labeled red, but he's actually blue. And so in his whole story, he goes through trying to figure out how to be red, and at the end of the day, he just can't be red because he really is blue. I was more confused reading the red, blue crayon story, I gotta be honest. Just give me some real text. Anyway, these are 3 of the books that are being used in our public school systems today to help our kids navigate some of these things. So just kind of be aware, be prepared for those conversations, and maybe start honing up on how you're gonna have that conversation with your own kiddos. So that was uncomfortable. You guys all did really good, right? Most of you? No one's crying, okay? It's usually how I judge a class. Anybody crying? No? Mrs. Cozit?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So, let's just say, your child comes home and says something was discussed at school. How are the teachers going to let us know? Are they going to, how can I say?
Is your question, if somebody in a classroom talks about a transgender situation or an LGBTQ community? Anything.
Like a serious subject.
Okay.
Okay? Is, are the rest of the parents gonna know? Is it just, or how are the teachers, I mean, obviously the teacher's gonna say something to talk to your parents about and, or, push it towards the biblical way.
Yeah, I think that your class is a prime example.
Okay.
Yay! Not yay, but yay, maybe? We have a little situation, and I'm not going to go out all of that because I think that that's an inappropriate thing. But we did have a very serious situation where we had a student that we were concerned was in danger. We had a child do exactly what we have talked about in our anti-bullying classes and in our cyberbullying things. When you see something, say something. When you watch something, say something. This child shared her experience with a grown-up. We were able to then talk to the parents. We were able to talk with the children. We processed with the children what they experienced as a community because it affected their family. And before they got home to you, there was an email in your inbox so that you would know what we talked about in that day. So that's how we handle those things. Depending on the nature of it, it may look a little bit differently. In that particular case, it was self-contained. We had clarity. There wasn't a lot of question about what was right or wrong, good or bad, sin kind of things. There wasn't a judgment thing happening there. There was just some facts that we processed. But it was uncomfortable. We were talking about a child self-harming in 5th grade, and that happens. So, yeah. How did the kids respond in that class? At the initial onset of the concern, they responded appropriately with love and compassion. They were very, very worried about their friend. They wanted me to do everything in my power to make sure that that friend was safe. We talked about their feelings. We prayed for the student. We prayed for all of the people that were potentially involved. We talked about our own heart. What is our role in that? What do we think we need to be doing? How could we prevent somebody from feeling that poorly about themselves? And then we all prayed as a class. I was blessed to be able to have had a conversation with mom and get back with the kids before they left campus so that they knew that the child was safe. So, yeah. I was so moved that they did what we've been teaching them to do. It's kind of like a fire drill. Like when the fire drill goes off and they all evacuate the room, we're so happy. This is way more important than a fire drill. One kid saw something and did the right thing. She risked, she had the courage, and she told the right people, got in the right community. And I want you guys to all know, she started with her parents. The first safe people she told were her parents. And then she came to school. Yeah.
Just to confirm, I don't think you guys could have handled it any better because our student came home and picked him up and in the car immediately. He said, this is what happened, and we were worried, and we told the adults, and the adults took care of it, and it's like the loop closed. You know, it's kind of shocking that they had to, that it actually happened, but there wasn't any fear. You know, as we talked about, like, what could we do to make that student feel more accepted or loved, and, you know, the answer was, I think we already did that, we talked about that, we're going to be doing it on an ongoing basis. So, I
Great,
think the
thanks.
school handled it
Thank you.
very good.
Our kids are pretty amazing. I love their compassion, and that we don't get everywhere. I can't imagine very many fifth grade classrooms where I would have had so many kids in tears over concern for their friend. True, genuine, heartfelt concern. Unfortunately, that topic does take us to the next one, which is critical mass in our world. Adolescent suicide. Adolescent suicide and self-harm. Our own school district, some of you may know, in the first 3 weeks of our school starting this school year, there were 4 children that killed themselves in ranges from elementary school to high school in our own district. So when we're looking at staggering numbers of what these statistics are, in 2007, 180 children committed suicide. By 2014, there were 425. We know that that number is exponentially growing just in our own little world, right? I think that's staggering to think about what our children see as a viable option. Again, it's critical that we're having these important conversations with our kids at home about their value, how God has created them unique for His purpose for them, right? Not the feel-good, Jeremiah 29:11, all things happen for the good. Not that, right? Those folks were going into some hard times. So we're going to check that verse at the door for this thing, and we're going to say that you are valuable, you are loved, you are uniquely made in the image of God for His purpose. We have to keep having that conversation. Yeah. It's harder and harder to get some of these ongoing statistics because now there's a question about what is suicide, what is self-harm, what is drug overdose, just different kinds of things. As I was really trying to research and get something a little bit more concrete into 2018, I just wasn't able to grab enough of what I thought was compelling evidence to give it to you guys. But this was a good trend for us to at least see, and by good trend I mean it's a good example of the trend. Okay? Suicidal tendencies don't just appear out of the blue, so there are some things that even at this young age that we can be doing. One is obviously be praying with our children, be having those conversations. You guys know that, that's not new. But if you're looking at a child who's withdrawing from their family or peers, loss of interest in previously pleasurable things, difficulty concentrating on schoolwork, neglecting their personal appearance, they have this sadness and hopelessness, and I'm not talking about normal teenager stuff, I have a teenage daughter, some of this stuff is just the day. I'm talking about an ongoing symptom of this, right? If this is something that you're seeing, we just want to encourage you to not ignore that, have a conversation with a professional, get in the dialogue with your child, have those conversations, see if there's some things that you guys can be doing to do that. One of the things in women, girls, that we see happen more than in boys is that before they would actually make a suicidal attempt, is that they would start cutting or self-harm. Huge, I don't understand it personally, but it is just a very, very real thing. It's something that if your kid says that they were walking by and it's 105 degrees and your kid has a long sleeve jacket on, I'm gonna ask them to take their jacket off, please. You guys do the same. If there's inappropriate clothing, like it's 100 degrees, 105 degrees, and you're out at a picnic and your kid's in long pants, pulled up socks, and a hoodie, have a conversation.
The best way is to give your kid attention at nighttime before they go to bed, they're read.
Mhm.
Talk to them. That's what I do every night.
Mhm.
That's the only way to bring up their emotion. And they will tell you, you just have to spend 45 minutes, whatever it is.
Sometimes just finding the right time of day for a kiddo is really the best thing. I think that's fantastic. Carving out times of days that fit your family, figure that out. Get in that dialogue. This generation we learned about are so independent that it's easy for us to say, oh, they've got this. They seem like they've got this. That's part of the deal. That's part of what's difficult for them. They have a harder time than we did because we didn't have any illusions of having it completely, right? We just didn't think we had it together. They do. So just get in the dialogue. We're not saying that we have any hard and fast rules and answers for how you do this. We're just saying these things are important. And the reason we're telling you about this particular one today is that in January of 2019, California SB 972 will mandate that every school with students 7th grade to 12th grade on the back of the student ID card have suicide prevention data available to them. So we are not exempt from that. We cannot say no. So I want to let you know that. When we give them that ID card, we are legally obligated to list suicide prevention on the back of it. I want you guys to have had that conversation with them before we do that. Right? That's a lot of questions. We want to give you guys the biggest chance to have the first conversation. We don't get to opt out of that one for really, really good reasons. Yes, it makes us uncomfortable. I get it. I don't like having these conversations with my own child. But so many people don't. That the state has stepped in and said you will. Or we will. Not a bad thing. If it saves the child's life and all I have to do is be uncomfortable, I'm okay with that. Saves your child's life, I will have this conversation every single night with anybody that will listen to me. It's that important. You may ask a question. We're kind of doing, just so you guys know, I'm going to stay on the complete timeline, right, because I'm allowing questions in the middle, right? You see me, like, getting myself out of hot water with this schedule. Okay, cool.
How or who differentiates what state mandates we are opting out of or what we can opt out of?
The state. The education code and the state tell us what we can and cannot opt out of. The sexual education courses, the comprehensive sexual education courses, are, we're able to opt out of them. I think probably there are many lobbyists from Christian communities that said that we were going to deal with that in-house as a religious or spiritual aspect. But this stuff spins around in the House and in the Senate for a long, long time before we ever bring it to you. If we read you everything that came out that we have to go sit through classes on, you guys would be nodding off. We only bring these to you once they've hit here. This is not completely passed, but will pass. We're 100% confident that this thing's gonna go through and we're gonna have to put them on the ID cards. Some of those things that talk about where there is more dialogue coming from a Christian school or private school, charter schools, they get to opt out of some of those kinds of educational codes. Just like Common Core, we can kind of pick and choose in some of that. We still have to meet some of the state standards, of course, and we do, or exceed them, but those kinds of things we get to opt out. Yeah.
So what is
Yeah.
it that's on the ID card, is it phone numbers, if they have questions or?
Yeah, it's just like you would typically find at the end of any kind of a movie or something like that. If you're concerned or you've had suicidal thoughts, this is a phone number or a place for you to call. It's an 800 number to a determined. Now, the thing that we can do is that the organization that we pick can be a Christian organization. So we do get to pick which suicide hotline we put them to. So we will, of course, be picking one that is a faith-based, Christ-centered organization. We want them to hear God has a purpose for them first. God loves them first, right?
Is the suicide that you guys are considering on this organization that's going to be answering these phones, are they going to be trained to be able to deal with the youth?
Absolutely.
Because there's two different.
Absolutely, yeah. We haven't made any hard decisions on who that's going to be. We'll be working with ACSI and other coalitions to make sure that we're picking the right and best suited organization to answer our kids' questions. Yeah, keeping in mind, we have our kids here too. I want my kid to have that right information too. She's not immune from having those same kinds of feelings as anybody else, right? So we're gonna make sure that we get the right, best information that we can. Yeah.
Just to make clear, it was 7th grade and on, or was it everyone?
7th grade and on. Mhm. Yeah. Now, I don't know if all of your kids are more organized than mine. Let me go back. Some of your children are not as organized as mine, and their ID cards are floating around out on the playground. We pick them up all the time. I can't say that a lower grade child won't have access to it. It just could happen. That certainly wouldn't be our goal. It's my guess, most kids will pay very little attention to it at all, right? They care about the picture. Let's be honest. Is this the picture going in the yearbook? That's the first question. But we don't want to blindside you guys. We don't want anything to come up and hit you without having some prior knowledge that it was coming. Does that make sense? I saw you get, you have that look like, there's more. I do that to students too, I see more. Okay, one place where you can find a bunch of information, we've said this before, but if you go on our website and you take a look at Access, they are a great resource for you. They are a culture translator. They send out an email once a week. They kind of give us a bunch of information. They'll give you great information. What is some slang terms your kids are using? What does that really actually mean? You know, I don't know if you all remember when being bad was good and good was bad, and your parents were like, what are you talking about? And so these guys do a great job of kind of clearing up some of that stuff. I'm learning a whole bunch of new things from your kids. So every year I'm like, that means what? Huh? What? But it's kind of pretty cool. They do a lot of the work for us. So if you are interested in what your kids are interested in, they're going to give you a great update, and they're in real time. So as things are coming up, they also will give you reviews of movies and different things that kids are watching. There's a brand new movie out. It's called 8th Grade. Anybody see it or hear about it? All right. So it's on demand. It kind of showed up, and I watch all the things that our kids are watching. My mind is numb most of the time. You're watching this for what purpose? This particular show seemed like it was going to be fantastic because it models a unpopular 8th grade girl in the last weeks of school and kind of how she's managing that. And 8th grade is awkward and it's weird. I don't know if y'all remember your 8th grade years, but it's kind of gross. And it was gross when I was in 8th grade. Coach and I were talking about it. It was gross when he was in 8th grade. And we talked about today how glad we are that we're not in 8th grade now because it's ickier yet, right? But in this movie, where we're so happy that we're watching this 8th grader kind of traverse through things that our kids kind of go through, not being very popular, trying to figure it all out. She's hanging out with some older kids. She does the high school shadow day. And then all of a sudden, Jade and I are lambasted by all of this language and this and that and the other. And then she needed an answer to a question because a boy looked at her and said, well, you know how to give a blowjob, right? And she said, well, of course. And then she went right on YouTube to figure that mess out. Jaden left the room. She's like, you know, I already did 8th grade. I don't need to be doing this anymore. But that's what the media is marketing to our kids. The title of this show is 8th grade. If your 8th grader can't watch the show 8th grade, who is it for? Right? So stay in the conversation, stay in the dialogue, get in the phones, get in the room with them. Pick a time every day, just to have a conversation. If you don't, someone else will. You are the most prepared. You are the most qualified. You are their parent. We're here to help you. We want to give you all of the resources that we have. We will set up meetings, talk to you. If there's anything that we can help you do, we would love to partner with you on that. So just let us know. As we look forward, before I give this back to Dr. Nichols, as we look forward and we're looking to the next Parent Info Night, which is going to be in January, if there are some concerns or things you want us to talk about, let me know. We certainly don't want it to always be what we're thinking is important to you. We want to make sure that if this is where that co-creation has great value now, so if there's something that we could be doing together as a community, let us know what that is, and we'd love to get that. You've got other guest speakers, you're tired of listening to me talk, I get it. Let's get somebody else in here to talk to y'all. That would be fantastic. Just kind of let us know. And then as we're kind of processing those things behind the scenes, Dr. Nichols is going to share with us a little bit about what we're doing in terms of actual physical safety here on our campus.
And I'm going to, that is a very difficult, you can breathe now. That is a very difficult thing. One of the things I want to say, because the things I'm going to talk about are pretty benign. I mean, they're important, because these days when you talk about student safety, the kind of things I'm going to talk about are things that are usually what come up. But I hope you appreciate the fact that with great intentionality, we're trying to not just hit the surface of things. We could actually just do what I'm about to do, the 3 minutes or so that I'm about to do, and be done with it. But that's not who we are. And tonight, this is like triple what we had last year when we first started this. And so I hope, one of the things that I want to share with you is I so appreciate the intentionality, the preventative nature of the things that our leadership team and our staff does. You often see Ms. Jedlick in her role as business operations director, not always as director of student services. And that's the other hat that she wears among many hats that both Mrs. Wynn and Ms. Jedlick wear. But this is something that is so important to us because they're our kids. We are a family. It does take all of us together because there's so much happening and so much changes so quickly. And so the response that was experienced in class this week, hopefully those things don't have to happen, but when they do, we try to be very proactive and have a plan in place. And part of it is knowing the kids and already being involved in some of the programs very proactively, like anti-bullying and some of those other kinds of things. Those discussions hit home with the kids so that they will tell you and tell us, because that's huge. And the media says don't tell any adult, because adults can't be trusted. And so it's nice when they actually finally get that message through all of that, for that to happen. And before we go further, I just want to say this access.org, if you don't subscribe to that already, you have to. It would be, if we had one required reading every week, it comes out on Friday, for every parent in the school, from now till Jesus comes back, as long as they exist, it's access.org. You really need to do that. We do that to help us to be aware of what your kids, our kids, are experiencing and hearing and seeing. So I cannot recommend that more highly than that. So just campus safety, and I'm going to do this very quickly so we can have a little bit of time for some more questions. Safety of our students clearly is a top priority. And some of the things that we do are seen, and some of the things we do for physical safety are unseen. Some of the current safety measures that we have in place, there's a variety of things. We do have a video surveillance system. We did recently expand that so that we have more cameras. And in addition to the other things that you'll see, we try to be out, in the mornings and the afternoons, try to be present. We have various gates. Of course, things are locked during the regular school day. Nothing is perfect, but we try very hard to be intentional and proactive about that. We're always on a modified lockdown. That's why all the doors are locked. We have the advantage of not being just get in one door, now you have access to everybody. You have to go one class to the next, and that's actually helps us from a safety perspective. One of the things that we did recently, the upper left, is we added more cameras, and now we also have more availability, not only on monitors. We have 2 different monitors in the office, but it's also available to administration mobilely. So on devices where we happen to be, we can check and see what's going on. Things are recorded 24/7. We can rewind to any camera in any place so we can see what's happened or what's going on. So we feel much better about that. In addition, we have other connections. Sometimes the things that you don't know, various law enforcement folks that are in our ALCS family, we have each other's mobile phone numbers, so we can text message. So it's also nice to know that when you have law enforcement with kids here, if anything is happening, they'll show up. It's just one of those things that happens. And so we have a good connection and a good relationship with folks in the law enforcement community. The other thing is that our commitment is to provide the safest and most secure educational environment possible. And that's physically, emotionally, socially, spiritually. And hopefully tonight is an outpouring to you of just how much we love our kids and the things that we're trying to do. And all of this is in addition to all the other things that we do, like rigorous academics and STEM and fundraising and all of those things that we do with our kids. Because the truth is, this is a key reason why our kids are here. It's our feeling is that's why, one of the great reasons you have your children here. Because it is statistically safer. There's no perfect place, but we try very, very hard to make it a place that's safe for kids in every way. So I'm going to ask Pastor Mike to come and offer some comments. Then maybe it's time for a few quick questions as we close. So Pastor Mike, why don't you come up? Any comments you have, and then Ms. Jedlick kind of moderate any additional questions that
Thank you, sir.
Can we just say thanks to the leadership team for an amazing event? As a parent of children here at ALCS, thank you on behalf of everybody. Our kids are in really good hands, and I get to see a peek under the hood a lot, working closely with this team, and I feel absolutely warm and fuzzy as a father, knowing how on top of things you are and watching my kids improve. It's only been a few weeks, and I had to make sure my daughter was my daughter. She came home and did her homework with no screens, and what are you doing to my kids? Please don't stop. And but also, so as a pastor, I'm new as a lead pastor. I keep getting demoted from middle school ministry to associate pastor, and now I've been demoted to a lead pastor. Because in the kingdom of God, you're never really promoted. And youth, so I come from a youth ministry background, is a long way to say that. And as we were talking tonight, I just had a gut feeling, if you're here tonight, and I think we said something like, well, over and over, in different ways, we touched on, you are the most influential spiritual figure in your child's life. I'm so grateful. I'm a product of amazing youth pastors that were in my life. But if my youth pastor called me tomorrow and ripped me up one side and down the other, it would roll right off my back. If my mom, even though I'm 40 years old, called tomorrow and ripped me up one side and down the other, it would be done. That never leaves. And I don't say that as a reminder to put shame, like, hey, you're the most, there's no finger wagging. It's an encouragement. You are the most important spiritual figure in your child's life. You can do it. God will help you. You've got access to amazing resources here, access.org. You've got a church that's cheering for you and behind you. Any way we can serve you, it doesn't merely take a village to raise a child. I believe it takes a village, a family, a church, a school, and probably 12 other things. So as a pastor tonight, you've got this. God gave you those kids, those grandkids, those kids you're raising for a reason, and God will supply you with the wisdom. God will supply you with the instincts. So if you're here tonight going, I don't know if I can do this, or I'm overwhelmed, hey, you're not alone. You've got this. Well, no, you don't have this. More importantly, God has you, and God will give you whatever you need to guide these kiddos. So together, we've got each other, and we got it. So keep up the good work. Just the fact that you're here, oh my goodness, that speaks volumes. So yeah, the last thing as a pastor, thank you. Keep up the good work. What you're doing matters, whether it's spending 25 minutes before bed with your kiddos or whatever works for your family. What you're doing matters, and what you're doing is working, and keep up the good work, and God bless you.
I'm really done. That's it, I'm done. They told me don't touch this thing, so I'm gonna try not to mess it up. Are there any, we do have a little bit more time, if you had any questions, concerns, things that we didn't cover that you thought we would or should, anything that we can be helpful? We still got a couple minutes of daycare. Because we're on a date, so we're running out of coffee. She's back. Good. Now how about you stop talking and we're just good. Don't tell anybody we got done at 8:03. Alexa. Oh, yeah, sorry. Are we good? You guys have any? Yes, yeah.
I have a question about the little ones. I know we're
Yeah.
talking about like cyberbullying and the electronic age, but what are we doing as a school when there's like younger kids that are like actually hitting each other or like behavior modification? What's the, luckily what is the steps that the staff takes when there is a child that is consistently misbehaving?
Yeah, great question. So, first and foremost, is we try to figure out, again, what is the heart of the issue, what's actually happening. Do we have, particularly with very little kids, so we're talking in that kinder, first grade age, some of it is impulse control, some of it is just they haven't quite figured out what they're supposed to be doing, some of it is that they are the little sibling and they're reenacting what they've experienced, and they're finally bigger than the next kid, and then sometimes they're just kind of being bullies. And we help redirect and remodify behavior modifications, different incentives for different kids, different behavior contracts we have. We are not a school that keeps every single kid because we just feel like that we need to for the tuition. I'm just going to throw it out there so those of you that know me well know that I'm just a straight shooter. I know that sometimes that can be the case, or it feels like that's the case. But before we would ever ask a child to leave or invite them to find a more appropriate place for them to study, we really do try to reform their character and help them learn new and better ways to manage that. Typically, if you've got a child in trouble with another child, our first line of defense is to separate them. The hardest part about that is that most of the time they're best friends. And so now we've got both people mad at us, so we really do just sort of work through some of those things. We connect with the parents, we try to work together with parents to make sure that we're working together to come up with good, effective solutions for their child as well as the child that's being bullied. We try to work with the child that's being bullied and the friends around to hold the other person accountable. So it really just depends on the situation. Not every single circumstance is exactly the same. But we really do try to reform the child, get them to be on board with what it is that we need them to be on board with. And ultimately, if they just can't quite get it figured out, we have a more uncomfortable conversation and invite them to not be here. That's our last resort. That's really not what Jesus does in our lives. We try really hard not to do that in others. We look at every single solution possible. We tried the same solution twice. We circle back, we try really hard, just like you would want us to do if the bully was your child. So we really start with the parents also, trying to figure out if the bully were your child, what were some things that you think that you would want us to try. Ironically, that's actually been helpful sometimes. Some of the other parents have had ideas, so we just kind of co-create on them. Is that helpful? Yeah. We don't have a you did it once, you did it twice, 3 times you're out policy, because Jesus doesn't have that policy for us. It's a great question. Separation is our first line of defense always. Anything else that's going on? We haven't had a real problem this year. We're super pleased. We've had a great start to our school year. We've had a couple kiddos that are struggling, like all of us. Some of us struggle to get to work every day. But it's been a great year. We have a lot of new families, a lot of new friends. I'm super excited about the way that our kids have embraced our new families and the great things that our new families have brought to our community. I just feel like our culture here, we're growing and we're stronger. And I feel like we're really, I know it gets used all the time, but we're better together, we're stronger together. But I really feel like that's true. I'm watching our parent groups work together really well. I've been responsible for our parent groups for years. This is the most cohesive, successful group that we've had since I've been here. So really, I think it's been a great, great year. And you got all of us wearing red, white, and blue, so I don't know. No, it's super fun though. We have parents and families now wanting to get involved and be a part of it. And that's kind of what we're trying to encourage. Get involved, be a part of our community. We talked about co-creation being a little bit scary as it relates to our kids, but as grown-ups, right, we're equipped to be able to handle some of that stuff. So I really feel like you guys are doing a fantastic job, and we just really appreciate each one of you. And more than we appreciate you, because you all know me again, truth, I love your kids so much. We're so thankful that we get to have them in our lives. And you guys are cool too, but they're really the big deal. So I guess if we're all good, I'm going to let Dr. Nichols pray us out, and then, yeah, you guys have daycare till whenever you need it. or 8:30. Because I'm not paying overtime.
That's right. The only thing that I really want to add is just a couple of very quick things. This is the pervasive attitude that we have with our kids. We love them so much, and we love you, but we really love your kids even more. We figure that's how you want that to be. The other thing is, more and more, and there are a number of us that are educators, have been educating for a while. I'll say the longest since I'm the guy, but have been in education for a long time. And I think that the reality is, unfortunately, that schools in communities like ours here, this school community, are becoming more and more rare. And yet, it's more and more important because of the kind of challenges that, quite honestly, we didn't face at the same level that our kids are facing and will face, the younger ones, as they're growing up. And so, to echo this idea of we are stronger together, it's not just like a catchphrase, it's a necessity. We have to stick together. One of the exciting things that Ms. Jedlick has alluded to is, we grew quite a bit this year, but praise the Lord, we grew the right way. We have attracted like-minded parents and families who want a place where their kids can grow and excel, and not only be in the bubble, I kind of hate that term, but be equipped, be emotionally prepared, be spiritually built up, so that they can go out into the world, because we know that will at some point happen. And I want to encourage you, and anywhere else who's watching, that when you leave here in 8th grade, please try to go to a Christian high school. I know it costs more money, but it will be worth it, because again, the things that you see here are only going to be accelerated and enhanced in the wrong way as they leave. So let me encourage you in that. And then the other thing is, just want to thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being such a support for ALCS. We are trying very, very hard to be the kind of school that God wants us to be, which means that there are a lot of things that we have to pay attention to. And I will tell you again, and I've said this before, this is my 36th year in education, I have never worked with the quality of staff, sorry, past schools, I've never worked with the quality of staff that is as intent on taking care of kids, that are as certified and credentialed and dedicated as this staff. It is remarkable. And as great as that is, if we didn't have a core of parents who believed exactly the same thing, this wouldn't work. But we do. And I think that for this time in history, for such a time as this, God has raised up Altamona Christian School. So thank you for being on the journey with us, because we literally are all in this together. So join me, please, as we pray. Father, we love you, and we thank you, first of all, for your grace and your truth, for forgiveness, for direction, for vision. Thank you, Father, for an opportunity as adults, educators, parents, family members, pastors, to come together and very frankly, very candidly talk about the kinds of things that are facing our kids and our families. All with the understanding that you are in control, that you have created this place and other places like this to help to nurture our kids in your admonition and in your love and in your grace, and that together we can work together proactively to try to protect our kids, and not only protect them and keep them away from things, but also to equip them and give them the tools that they need. First of all, at home with mom and dad, and the tools as they grow up and as they begin to be able to comprehend and make wise decisions, that they'll have those kinds of tools as they grow and walk further down this path of life. So, Father, continue to unify us as you have been doing in the extraordinary experience that you are giving us here together at ALCS. Father, we pray for our kids. Most of all, God, protect them in every possible way. And Father, use us as you will to make that happen. And bless us and our families. Bless this place, this school. Thank you for this church that so loves the school and supports us. And Father, guide us and protect us as we go to our homes. We ask this in Jesus' name. And all God's people said, Amen. Thank you so much, and have a